All right, Niners Nation, let's dive into this off-season reality check and what it means for San Francisco heading into next year. First off, you have to look at the big picture. The talent is absolutely there. The roster is stacked with elite players, and when this team is healthy, they are legitimately one of the best in the league. But the one thing that has been holding them back for a decade is the same thing that reared its head again this season: injuries. The Niners have battled through another year of significant health issues, and it's not just bad luck anymore. It has become a pattern. And patterns don't just happen by accident. If they want to be a true Super Bowl contender, the organization has to take a hard look at how they are handling player health, recovery, and injury prevention. Now, I know people love to talk about talent and coaching, but the harsh truth is this: you can't win at the highest level if your team is constantly missing key players. It's not sustainable. The Niners made it to the second round of the playoffs with a defense that was essentially a second-string unit and an offense that had glaring flaws. That says a lot about the talent and resilience on this team, but it also highlights the gap between being good and being elite in a wide-open NFC. With the top seed in the AFC now down a quarterback for the season, San Francisco absolutely had a shot at the Super Bowl if they had stayed healthier. That opportunity was there, and they didn't capitalize because they couldn't stay on the field. So what do you do about it? You start with the strength and conditioning staff. If the weight training, recovery programs, and practice regimen are not producing results, then it's time for a change. You have to ask hard questions. Are the players being overworked? Is the training too intense? Is the recovery too inconsistent? And even beyond that, you have to evaluate the entire environment. If Jed York needs to consider moving the practice field location, then he should do it. Get studies done, bring in experts, and figure out what is going wrong, because if this team continues to be as injured as it has been, you can forget about maximizing your chances of winning a Super Bowl. The numbers don't lie, the bodies don't lie, and the results don't lie either. Now, let's talk about the offensive line, because this is a massive issue that has been exposed in the biggest moments since 2021. This unit has been exposed against the best competition this year. It was exposed 3 times against Seattle, and Seattle is not just any team, they are your primary competition. Mike McDonald's defense is young, loaded, and extremely well coached at all 3 levels. That defense is not going away if you want to contend for a Super Bowl. You cannot do it with an average offensive line. You just can't. And I have to be honest, I'm not confident the Niners are going to address this properly. The reason is that Kyle Shanahan recently said Jake Brendel is one of the best centers in the NFL. That statement doesn't inspire confidence that the team will make the necessary improvements. Now, I'm not saying Jake Brendel is a bad player. He is smart, he's cerebral, and he is excellent at calling out protections. But being a smart center is not the same thing as being a great center. This offensive line has been tested and found wanting in the biggest games. And it's not just a matter of a couple of bad match-ups. It's a consistent issue that has plagued them for years. You can't win a Super Bowl with an offensive line that can't hold up against elite defenses. It's not realistic, it's not serious, and it's not going to get fixed unless the front office admits there is a problem and takes action. Moving on to the wide receiver room. This is another area that needs a serious overhaul. Ricky Pearsall is a good player, but the question is whether he can stay healthy, and beyond that, the Niners simply do not have a true vertical threat at receiver. When you look at the numbers from that game against Seattle, the wide receivers combined for 3 catches and 24 yards on 10 targets. That is not a group that strikes fear into opposing defenses. Seattle did not respect that receiving corps, and that's a huge problem. Jauan Jennings and Kendrick Bourne are both set to be free agents, which means the team could lose 2 of their more reliable options. That leaves you with Pearsall, Demarcus Robinson, Jordan Watkins, and Jacob Cowing under contract, and Robinson has an option going into the following season. But still, that group is not enough. So what's the answer? You have to get better at wide receiver, and you might have to take some risks. One intriguing option is someone like Kyle Pitts from Atlanta. Now, I know what people are going to say. He can't block, and he's basically a glorified wide receiver at tight end, but he is a freak athlete, and he changes the dynamic of an offense. If you bring in a player like that, it could mean letting go of someone like Jauan Jennings. But it also means giving Shanahan and Brock Purdy a weapon that can stretch the field. Imagine what the offense could look like with a player like Pitts at tight end. It opens up the playbook. It forces defenses to adjust, and it creates more space for Christian McCaffrey to operate. Speaking of McCaffrey, this is another big question mark. He had an incredible season, but you have to wonder whether it was maximized. Was this a wasted year because the team didn't make a move at the deadline? Was the offense held back because of injuries and lack of protection? At some point, Father Time is going to catch up to CMC. He is a phenomenal player, but he is not immune to the toll that carries on his body. Brian Robinson is going to be a free agent, and Jordan Mason was one of the bright spots of the season. It took 19 games to give him a carry, which is absurd. There are questions at running back, but I'm not questioning Brock Purdy. He made some incredible plays this season. The problem is that the offensive line didn't give him a fair shot to succeed. On the defensive side, the situation is a bit clearer. If the team loses Robert Saleh, the question becomes who steps in. Gus Bradley could be the internal option, but there are other strong candidates like Raheem Morris or Jim Schwartz. And the defense will get better when Nick Bosa, Mike Williams, and Fred Warner return healthy. Those three alone elevate the unit. The rookies like Alfred Collins, C.J. West, and Upton Stout showed promise, and Bryce Huff is a solid second pass rusher. But he is a complementary piece, not the star you need in a Super Bowl run. And then there are the questions at linebacker and in the secondary. Who is going to be the linebacker next to Fred Warner? Nick Martin has had injury issues, and we haven't seen him since that concussion in Week 13. The cornerback situation is also unclear. Renardo Green is solid, but is he good enough to be the true opposite of Diamador Lenoir? Safety play has been a major weakness all season. Malik Mustafa is physical and might be good enough to be one of the safeties, but Marcel Harris has been a liability in coverage. And Jason Pinnock has bounced around because he is not at the level you need. A veteran safety would be a valuable addition. And here's the thing, I have more questions about the offense than the defense. That is not a knock on the defense, but it's a reality. The offense has to be fixed. You can't go into next season hoping the same issues magically disappear. The Seattle game exposed the Niners in a way that was ugly. They needed to be flawless to win, and they weren't. It was messy from the jump, and the 41-6 scoreline is a harsh way to go out. But don't let that ruin what was a fun season. 12-5 with everything that happened is still impressive. They won a playoff game, and that is an achievement in itself. Now, heading into next year, the Niners are still going to be viewed as one of the top Super Bowl contenders, especially with a third-place schedule that should help. But the roster issues and the injury problems have to be addressed. This is not a joke anymore. The biggest need for San Francisco this offseason is to get and stay healthy, and that requires investment. It requires commitment. It requires accountability. If they want to be the team that finally breaks through and wins the Super Bowl, they have to stop treating injuries like a recurring theme and start treating them like a solvable problem. All right, let's keep going because the offseason storyline for the Niners is far from over. And the way this team approaches the next few months will determine whether they are legitimate Super Bowl contenders or just another talented squad that keeps falling short. If you look at the defense, there's a lot to like. The talent is already there, and the core pieces are what every team dreams of having. Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and Dre Greenlaw form an elite front and linebacker group, and when they are healthy, they can completely change the complexion of a game. The pass rush is a real weapon, and the ability to disrupt quarterbacks is something the Niners have built their identity around. Add in the fact that the rookies like Alfred Collins and C.J. West showed flashes of being contributors, and you have a defense that can be dominant. But even with all of that, there are still holes that need to be filled. The secondary, especially at safety, was a consistent issue throughout the season. You need reliability back there, and you need players who can cover and tackle at a high level. Malik Mustafa has the physicality, but you need more than just physicality. Marcel Harris has been a liability in coverage, and Jason Pinnock has bounced around the league because he has not proven he can be a true difference maker. The Niners need a veteran presence in the safety room, someone who can stabilize that group and bring a steadying influence. A veteran safety can also help mentor the younger players and make the whole defense more cohesive, and if you can get that piece, it elevates the entire unit. The cornerback situation is also something to watch. Diamador Lenoir has been solid, but the opposite side has been inconsistent. Renardo Green is a decent player, but the question is whether he is the long-term answer opposite Lenoir. You need a corner who can lock down receivers and make life easier for your pass rush. If you are constantly playing with soft coverage, your pass rush gets exposed, and your defense can get picked apart. That is why adding depth and talent in the secondary is so important. It's not just about having star players. It's about having a complete defense that can perform in all phases. The Niners have the core, but they need to fill in the gaps. Now, let's talk about the coaching situation. If Robert Saleh leaves, the question becomes who takes over. Gus Bradley is the internal option, and he is certainly a candidate, but if the Niners decide to look outside, Raheem Morris and Jim Schwartz are names that make sense. The coaching staff has to be built around a vision for the team. And if the team is going to prioritize health and physicality, the staff needs to support that. A defensive-minded coach could help maintain the identity. But the key is finding someone who can manage the team and make the tough decisions. The head coach is the face of the franchise, and the direction they choose will impact every part of the organization. On the offensive side, there are still big questions. The offensive line needs to be rebuilt. The wide receiver room needs to be upgraded, and the team needs to figure out how to keep the offense explosive and balanced. The quarterback is not the issue. Brock Purdy is a franchise quarterback. He is smart, he is accurate, and he makes plays under pressure. The issue is giving him the tools to succeed. You can't ask a quarterback to carry a team if he doesn't have the protection or the weapons to make plays downfield, and that is what the Niners need to fix. One of the biggest questions is what Christian McCaffrey looks like next year. He had an outstanding season, but you have to wonder whether it was fully maximized. Did the team waste some of his prime because they didn't make the moves needed to support him? It's a hard question to answer, but it's a real concern. McCaffrey is a workhorse, and the way he plays is physically demanding. At some point, his body is going to feel the toll. The Niners need to protect him and give him opportunities to succeed without carrying the entire offense on his back. Another thing to consider is the tight end position. If the Niners are going to add someone like Kyle Pitts, it changes the offense. Pitts is a dynamic athlete who can stretch the field, but he is not a great blocker. That means the Niners would have to adjust their scheme and rely on other players to pick up the slack in blocking, but the upside is huge. Pitts could open up the field in a way that the Niners have not seen in a while. He forces defenses to make decisions, and that can create opportunities for everyone else. If the Niners can make that work, it could be a game changer. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to For Niners Zone and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the San Francisco 49ers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The NFL world was caught off guard after quiet whispers began to circulate around the sudden cancellation of the matchup between the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. While no official explanation has been fully detailed, league insiders and executives close to the situation suggest that the decision may be tied to a complex mix of behind-the-scenes concerns rather than a single dramatic trigger. Sources familiar with league operations speculate that logistical complications could be at the heart of the issue. Travel coordination, stadium readiness, and internal scheduling pressures have all been mentioned as possible factors. Others believe the cancellation could be linked to broader league-wide evaluations, with the NFL reassessing certain operational standards amid heightened scrutiny from stakeholders and broadcast partners. There is also growing chatter that competitive balance may have played a subtle role. Both franchises remain central figures in the league's long-term marketing strategies, and some insiders wonder if the NFL preferred to avoid a game that could be impacted by unresolved internal variables. While this theory remains unconfirmed, it has fueled debate across front offices and fan circles alike. Another layer of speculation points toward internal league policies still being interpreted or enforced. The NFL has, in recent years, shown a willingness to act decisively when situations fall into gray areas, even if those actions disrupt the calendar. Observers note that this cancellation may be a signal of stricter governance rather than an isolated event. For fans, the lack of clarity has only intensified curiosity. The rivalry between the Seahawks and the 49ers carries historical weight, and its sudden removal from the schedule has left a noticeable gap. Until the league offers a clearer narrative, the cancellation stands as a reminder that in the NFL, not all decisions are made on the field, and sometimes the most intriguing stories unfold far from the stadium lights. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the San Francisco 49ers, make sure to subscribe to 49ers Zone and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.